In June 24, 2007, 2 weeks after the rating agencies made their first big downgrade move, and 1 week before the bankruptcy of the Bear Stearns hit funds, Countrywide announced its results for the first half of the year in a last desperate grab for market share. Countrywide had waited until March 2007 to stop offering big bank loans that allowed borrowers to purchase a home with no money down, as other weaker corresponds lenders those that made loans themselves but them sold their loans to bigger lenders began to go under. Countrywide ramped up its business of buying loans since Countrywide was no longer entering into agreements to sell its lands before they were made or purchased. The company was bearing all the risks that the market could crack on its own books. The root Mozilla had long insisted Walden, in fact, Countrywide had started to sprint, although the company announced a profile quarter. Investors were shocked to hear that its earnings had declined for the third quarter in a row on a year-over-year basis, and that delinquency rates on Countrywide subprime mortgage had more than doubled to 23.7% from less than 10% at the end of March. Delinquents in prime mortgage. Prime mortgage also expected, and the company revealed that it was taking several other hits, including word of impairments, mostly due to declines in the value of home equity residuals, and another in losses in loans held on its balance sheet. We are experiencing home price depreciations almost like never before, with the exceptions of the Great Depression, said Mozilla on the company's conference call today. Morgan Stanley analyst Ken Posner was startled by the news that is just not a change of radio on world expect for at least for an old-fashioned prime portfolio. He said on the conference call, Countrywide is a mortgage supermarket, responded Chief Risk Officer John M.C. Murray. So is my belief that the portfolio that we have for the most part is going to be a good reference for what exists on a broader basis. At another point during the conference called MC Murad nothing. So the way I think about Prime is that it covers a very vast spectrum. The implications was clear. Countrywide was acknowledging that prime and subprime warrants has clearly delineated as much had believed, while investors who dug through the prospectus for Countrywide's mortgage banked securities might have known that it came as a shock to many. MC Murray also had two messages that were contrary to everything Mozilla had purchased over the years. Leverage at originations matters. He said, more leverage means more serious delinquents. That is, the more debt the consumer borrows, the more likely he was going to default, and said documentations matter. The less documentations, the higher the serious delinquents. How else equal? That that day, countrywide stock fell more than 10% to close at $30.50. There's research analyst at Silv Nicholas, which had turned bearings on countrywide earlier in the year, wrote in a report to clients given to the magnitude of credit problems in the bank. We think MDMT made serious miscalculations and possibility misrepresentations about the quality of the loans debt to the bank. They found that countrywide supposedly prime home equity securitizations were performing in line with competitors' supreme deals. Soon after the conference call, MC Murray resigned. Later, later that fall, Walter Smith Chiswick, the senior executive in charge of enterprise risk assessment, met with Countrywide Audit Committee. Smith Chiswick had been warning since 2005 that the residuals until once Countrywide had retained on its balance sheets posed a much bigger risk than was being acknowledged. According to several former executives, he said that if nothing was going to change, then he had no choice but to resign. He too left the company. Um, the German bank that was on the other side of John Paulson's Goldman's arrangement Abacus Trade was beginning to spook the market over the weekend of July 28 and 29. State-owned German banks brokered a bailout of the bank that would eventually rise to it was the first bank to be rescued because of the securities mortgage on its books. It will not be the last. The name became August on August 8. France's largest bank suspended redemptions from three of its investment funds, become its golden value some of its subprime mortgage banking securities. Australia-based Yield Fund, which had bought into Goldman's Timberwolf deal, suffered several losses. It was soon go into liquidations because of its exposure to supreme asset. August August home price fell 4.4% from the previous year, the longest decline in 6 years. Jody Chen, the head of mortgage portfolio management at Washington Mutual, sent an email to a group of college entitled Scenarios. He wrote 20% down in from today's meeting. I understand that we don't have the courage to evaluate this scenario.